The strongest buildings are not shaken by storms because their foundations are laid in silence. What if I told you the greatest version of yourself will not be born in noise, applause, or validation, but in quiet, consistent construction when no one is watching? True power does not announce itself with noise or spectacle. It does not require attention, approval, or an audience. Instead, it is forged in silence in the lonely hours of practice, in the hidden struggles of self-mastery, and in the quiet corners of discipline where no one is watching. The real strength of a man or woman is not measured when they are at the podium, under the lights, or at the peak of recognition. It is measured in their private hours when they choose progress over comfort, growth over ease, and purpose over distraction. Silence is not weakness. It is the sacred ground upon which all great power is built. When the world is silent and still, when there are no cheers or likes or applause, that is where you discover what you're truly made of. Consider the blacksmith. He does not sculpt swords in public. His forge is not in the marketplace. It is tucked away hot, hidden, and relentless. He bends steel under fire away from the eyes of the world, hammering out the imperfections until the blade is battle ready. No one sees the hours he spends reheating, reshaping, and refining. But when the time comes and that blade is drawn, its sharpness and strength tell the story the blacksmith never needed to speak. So too with people. Those who cultivate their character, who deepen their knowledge, who discipline their habits in private without fanfare, are the ones who emerge unshakable when life calls them to the front. The quiet work becomes the foundation of visible power. Think of Thomas Edison, who failed thousands of times in pursuit of the light bulb. The world only knows his success, but his true power lay in those many solitary nights battling doubt, confronting failure, and pushing forward without the need for recognition. Each failed experiment done in silence forged the resilience that made him a name for the ages. Or take the example of athletes like Michael Jordan, who was known to practice longer than any of his teammates, taking hundreds of shots in the dark of morning before the stadium lights ever turned on. The greatness the world witnessed was simply a reflection of the power he had already forged alone in silence. Silence creates clarity. It eliminates distraction. It forces you to confront yourself, and in that confrontation you find your limits and then begin the slow, deliberate process of surpassing them. When you remove the noise, you remove the illusion. You see who you are without applause, without performance, without comparison. You begin to operate from a place of internal power, not external pressure. That kind of power doesn't fade. It does not depend on circumstances. It does not crumble when the crowd disappears. It becomes permanent because it is rooted in something deeper than exposure. It is rooted in identity, in commitment, and in a quiet covenant you've made with yourself to become something great. The world today is saturated with noise notifications, opinions, criticism, praise, distractions disguised as opportunities, and opportunities disguised as validation. From the moment you wake up, there is a war for your attention, and most of it is carefully designed to keep you looking outward rather than inward. This constant noise pulls you away from your mission, distorts your focus, and fragments your energy. The noise says you must keep up. It tells you that if you're not posting, you're not progressing. If you're not being seen, you're not succeeding. But this noise is not a guide, it is a trap, a clever illusion that replaces real growth with the appearance of progress. It seduces your ego with shallow victories and starves your character of deep discipline. The more you feed on the noise, the further you drift from the quiet work that truly builds you. Think of a young entrepreneur who starts with a vision and a hunger to create real value. At first, they focus intensely reading, planning, building, learning. But then comes the temptation to impress. They begin scrolling through the highlight reels of others' success stories, comparing their progress with others' projections. Soon, the need to appear successful begins to outweigh the need to actually be successful. They start spending more time curating content than developing content, more time crafting captions than creating value. The noise has tricked them into measuring their worth by how quickly they can be noticed, not how deeply they can develop. What once was purpose-driven becomes performance-driven. The original mission is lost beneath the pressure to keep up appearances. Or take the student who once studied quietly, diligently, aiming to master their craft. They were focused on understanding, on becoming exceptional. But the world around them is loud classmates boasting about grades, friends flaunting internships, social media painting pictures of perfect careers. Slowly, that student begins to feel behind. They abandon the deep work for the fast track. They begin chasing what looks good rather than what builds real skill. The noise didn't just distract them, it redirected their ambition. And that is the danger. Noise doesn't just waste your time, it reshapes your priorities. Even the most talented individuals can become enslaved by the opinions of others. Athletes who once loved the game begin performing for cameras instead of for excellence. Writers stop writing from the soul and start writing what will go viral. Leaders begin managing optics rather than outcomes. In every case, the noise shifts the motivation, and once your motivation no longer comes from within, you are no longer free. You become reactive instead of deliberate. Your attention gets hijacked. Your energy is drained by comparison, competition, and the craving for attention. Noise is a trap because it makes you forget what actually matters. It feeds your ego but starves your spirit. It pulls you into the crowd when your greatness demands that you walk alone. It promises instant approval but robs you of long-term achievement. It makes you think you're progressing when in fact you're only performing. And while you're busy keeping up with the noise, the silent worker, the one you never noticed, is building real strength, real skill, and real success in the background, untouched by the distraction, unmoved by the spotlight. Before every towering name etched into history, there was a season, sometimes years, sometimes decades, where no one knew they existed. No praise, no recognition, no spotlight, just quiet effort, lonely nights, relentless trial and error. Every giant we admire today once walked in complete obscurity, toiling in silence while the world looked elsewhere. We often forget this truth because we meet them at the peak, we see the triumph, the titles, the power. But we miss the long climb, the invisible grind, the ignored beginnings. There is no shortcut to greatness. The path of every giant starts where no one is watching. They didn't begin with fame, they began with focus. Take Albert Einstein as an example. Before the world hailed him as one of the greatest minds in history, he was dismissed, doubted, and even ridiculed. He couldn't land an academic position. He worked as a low-level clerk in a Swiss patent office, reviewing other people's inventions. It was in that small, quiet office that he spent years scribbling equations in notebooks, pondering the mysteries of the universe while the world barely noticed he existed. His miracle year in 1905, when he published 4 revolutionary scientific papers, did not come from public applause or grand lectures. It came from a man who was invisible to the world, yet fully committed to his vision in the silence of anonymity. The same can be said for writers like J.K. Rowling. Before Harry Potter became a global phenomenon, she was a single mother living on welfare, writing in cafes while her child slept beside her. 12 publishers rejected her manuscript before one finally took a chance. No crowd cheered her on during those writing sessions. No one believed in the story but her. Her quiet commitment to her imagination, her belief in a world no one else could yet see, is what made her a literary giant. But the world only saw the finished product, not the invisible journey of persistence and isolation that came before it. Even in the world of business, consider Steve Jobs. Long before Apple became a household name, Jobs and Steve Wozniak worked out of a garage. They had no audience, no market dominance, no media coverage, just an idea and the will to bring it to life. The tech giants we see today, built on innovation, scale, and global recognition, were once 2 unknown young men soldering computer parts by hand, pitching to people who didn't understand or believe in what they were doing. They had to fight through doubt, rejection, and obscurity before their work reshaped the world. The garage was not glamorous, but it was sacred ground because that's where the invisible foundation was laid. What the world calls overnight success is almost always the final stage of a very long, unseen process. The books you love, the songs that move you, the inventions that change your life, most of them were born in the shadows. And that's the lesson. You must be willing to be unseen before you are unforgettable. You must be willing to keep showing up, to keep working, to keep believing without applause, without recognition, and often without support. Every giant was once invisible, and it was precisely in their invisibility that they developed the strength, resilience, and vision that would one day make them stand tall above the rest. In a world obsessed with optics, it's easy to confuse appearance with achievement. Everywhere you look, people are showcasing their lives' highlight reels of curated perfection designed to impress rather than express. But success is not a matter of how well you display yourself to others. It is a matter of how deeply you discipline yourself when no one's watching. Real growth doesn't happen on stages. It happens in silence and structure, in the daily decisions you make when no one is clapping, liking, or sharing. Display is external. Discipline is internal. And only one of them will build the life you truly want. Because display might earn you followers, but only discipline will make you a leader. Display might win attention, but only discipline wins mastery. The truth is, those who chase image over integrity are building glass castles beautiful to look at, but fragile and empty when tested by the weight of real responsibility. Imagine a man who wakes up at 5 a.m. every day not to post about it, not to announce it to the world, but because he's committed to mastering his craft. He trains, reads, learns, works not for applause, but for alignment with his purpose. There's no camera, no audience, just a calendar full of consistent, unglamorous action. That man may be invisible to the crowd, but he's becoming invaluable to his mission. Contrast that with someone who lives for the show, who broadcasts every move, every workout, every late-night hustle. They look like they're ahead. They sound like they're winning. But beneath the surface, they're inconsistent. They skip the hard days. They rely on perception rather than persistence. Their efforts are motivated by visibility, not vision. And when the excitement fades or the pressure mounts, they have no foundation to stand on. Consider the legendary basketball player Kobe Bryant. He was known not just for his talent, but for his insane discipline. While others partied, he practiced. While others slept, he trained. His Mamba mentality was not a slogan, it was a lifestyle. His greatness wasn't built on highlight reels or press conferences. It was forged in thousands of hours in the gym, long before the world ever saw him lift a trophy. His display on the court was merely a reflection of the discipline he had already paid for in full. And that's the key. True performance is the interest earned on the investment of relentless discipline. Without the discipline, the display is hollow. Even in fields like writing, music, or entrepreneurship, the same principle holds. The best-selling author is not the one who tweets the most about writing. They're the one who writes every single day, regardless of mood. The most impactful musician is not the one with the loudest persona, but the one who spends hours mastering their instrument, refining their sound in solitude. The most resilient entrepreneur is not the one who constantly updates their social media about grinding. They're the one making calls, solving problems, and pushing forward with a plan, even when no one else knows what they're building. Discipline is the invisible engine behind all visible success. It is the quiet force that carries you through seasons of doubt, distraction, and delay. It is not sexy, it is not shareable, and it rarely feels good, but it always works. In a time where everyone is rushing to be heard, to be seen, to be noticed first, rather than be known for something lasting, the true achiever operates differently. The achiever doesn't seek to impress with words, they aim to impress with results. They don't speak to be loud, they move to be clear. They don't post their progress at every step. They focus so that their outcomes speak for them when the time is right. This is not arrogance, it is mastery. When your work is rooted in discipline and your motives are grounded in purpose rather than performance, your results become undeniable. They ring louder than any announcement, echo longer than any shout, and reach farther than any self-promotion ever could. While the world is busy trying to make noise, you must be busy creating impact. Because once your results are real, the world will have no choice but to listen. Picture the difference between a person constantly advertising their grind, flaunting their effort, always talking about what they're going to do, and someone who simply shows up, stays consistent, and silently achieves. The former gathers attention, but often lacks depth. The latter builds quietly, and when their work is revealed, it changes the game. Consider the story of Elon Musk. For years, people doubted his ideas, from electric cars to reusable rockets. He didn't win the world over with speeches. He didn't argue with skeptics on stage. He let the first Tesla Model S roll off the line. He let the Falcon 9 rocket land vertically. He let the results make the statement. Critics fell silent, not because he debated them, but because his results gave them no room to argue. In everyday life, the same principle applies. Think of the employee who doesn't spend time gossiping in the break room or broadcasting their ambitions to the team. They simply show up early, work with precision, contribute with excellence, and over time, they become the one others trust, respect, and rely on. Promotions, influence, and recognition follow not because they demanded it, but because their results prove their value. In contrast, those who constantly talk about their potential, their plans, their ideas, but never back it with execution are soon tuned out. The world doesn't need more declarations. It needs demonstrations. Or take the young artist who avoids the trap of social media comparison. While others are chasing algorithms, she's refining her technique. While others are focused on followers, she's focused on mastery. She doesn't need to explain her passion, justify her absence, or defend her choices. When her work is finally released, it carries the weight of preparation. It speaks volumes without a word spoken. Because when you truly invest in becoming excellent, your work gains a voice of its own. It does the talking. It enters rooms before you do. It demands respect without needing to beg for it. And in that, there is power, not the noisy power of temporary attention, but the enduring power of proven ability. Letting your results make the noise doesn't mean you stay silent forever. It means you stay silent until you have something real to say. Not from your mouth, but from your mastery. The noise of your results lasts longer because it's rooted in truth. It inspires more because it comes from substance. It multiplies because it came from solitude, from sweat, from the countless moments of unseen labor that now shine through in undeniable, measurable success. The strength to stand tall in public is earned in the quiet places where no one is watching. The foundation of every great life, every enduring legacy, is laid in the unseen hours where there is no spotlight, no audience, and no applause. The private realm is where you struggle with your weaknesses, battle your doubts, refine your character, and establish your disciplines. It is where you construct the kind of internal fortitude that will not crack when the pressure of visibility comes. Public pressure is not what breaks people. Private unpreparedness is. You must first build in private if you ever expect to withstand the weight that comes with public success, because the world will always test your work, your values, your patience. And if you haven't fortified yourself behind the scenes, no amount of image will hold you together when the spotlight burns hot. Consider the architect designing a skyscraper. No one sees the months spent testing materials, revising blueprints, or calculating stress tolerances. The public only sees the tower when it starts rising into the sky. But if the foundation is shallow, if the invisible work isn't done with precision and care, the whole structure is doomed to collapse. It's the same with your life, your career, your mission. You cannot skip the groundwork. You must build depth before you seek height. When people try to fast-track their rise without developing emotional resilience, mental clarity, or spiritual grounding, they may appear successful for a moment, but the moment will not last. Because public life magnifies what you built or failed to build in private. Think of Oprah Winfrey. Before becoming one of the most powerful media voices in history, she faced poverty, abuse, and rejection. The world didn't witness her long hours of introspection, study, and preparation. They only saw the poised woman who could command a room and connect with millions. But that poise was not a gift. It was the result of inner work, of countless silent battles fought and won away from the public eye. Her ability to carry the weight of influence came because she had already carried the weight of adversity and solitude. She had built her internal structure strong enough to sustain public elevation. Even in sports, this principle is universal. Take Serena Williams. Yes, the world has watched her dominate courts for decades, but they didn't see the relentless hours of practice, the lonely sacrifices, the emotional setbacks she endured behind closed doors. They saw her win. They saw her stand, but she was only able to do that because she built herself up when no one was cheering. She became a fortress in private so that no storm in public could shake her. The interviews, the endorsements, the pressure of millions watching, none of it could unravel her because she had already faced far tougher challenges in silence. In business, the entrepreneurs who truly thrive are those who do the work when no one's buying, when no one's believing, when there is no praise or promise. They map out systems, build teams, and prepare infrastructure not because they're being watched, but because they know what's coming. They understand that success brings scrutiny. Visibility attracts both admiration and attack. And if your structure is weak, if your values aren't solid, your mindset isn't clear, your habits aren't locked in, then the very thing you thought would elevate you will instead expose you. Public success only lasts when private preparation is deep, and that preparation cannot be outsourced, faked, or rushed. It must be built day by day with intention in the dark.